again, just a quick update on a previous video. I did a quick video regarding running Baldur's Gate 3 on a 960M using a i5-6200u. The feedback has been mixed, not surprisingly, because it didn't run very well. I've done some digging and the CPU is really holding this GPU back. I mean, this is running a later version of the game as well, a newer version of the game, so it might be slightly better. Let's have a look. So it's running in DX11, which makes a massive difference. Running in Vulkan with this CPU causes a lot of slowdown, which is unfortunate because normally Vulkan you see slightly better performance. Hopefully they'll fix that later on, but let's just quickly run in. Now I've done some reading, played around with some settings, and I'm using a slightly different area of the game to get a better feel for how it works. I'm using the Goblin Camp because outside there's a lot of NPCs running around, which taxes it quite a lot, and inside there's also a lot of NPCs, so it's kind of one of the busier areas of the game that I've seen so far. Currently the settings are, it's the best I get, it's pretty much been low across the board. Medium textures to make it look a little nicer, and everything else is off. Now I've been playing around with the audio settings. Setting it to low seems to gain a few FPS. It seems to be a bit of a mixed bag, but it does seem to help a little, so I'm just turning it back onto low. Now, running in 1080p for now, with a 30 FPS cap. As you can see, it's not running that great. It's running at 25 FPS outside, which is not what you really want to be dealing with. Wrong button.
Go ahead, I'm listening.
And it's not ideal. Now this is all the settings off, so if we go back into the options, currently got a frame cap enabled, so I'll turn that off in a minute. No VSync, and it's currently set to, as I said before, everything is on low apart from the textures. I can knock these down to, I'm going to knock this down to low, and you'll see that it makes a little bit, no, it doesn't make that much of a difference, but definitely apply that. You may get a few extra frames, so we're getting up 32 here, which isn't, obviously not ideal, but this is outside in the Goblin Camp, which is quite intense. So let's go back into the game. You'll get a lot of drops, but I find these drops occur, and the camera gets stuck a lot. Come on. Occur in most areas when you pan the camera around, because it seems to be, I get this on the 1080 Ti as well, where it's not quite loading the textures in quick enough, and the frame rate suffers for it. But obviously this suffers more because it hasn't got that headroom. CPU is running it pretty much full whack. GPU is apparently running 100%, but it seems to not always be telling the truth up there because of the CPU bottleneck. But we're getting 32 FPS at the moment. In conversations, and when you're talking to NPCs, you normally find a slightly higher frame rate because it has less to draw. I can hear we're getting an easy 30 FPS here.
You ain't rounding me up for no rate. No way. That's what I'd sleep it off.
And inside, I mean, I don't know if you can hear that, but the fans just started spinning in the laptop. Normally when playing a game, the fan spins pretty quick. It's taken a fair few minutes to get here, so that's how I know that the GPU isn't really being taxed as much as it says. Using MSI after there, but the CPU is still one core pretty much running at always 100%, and the rest are always pretty high. But inside you get slightly better frame rate,
As the symbol glows,
using all the low
power
settings.
courses through you.
Not great,
Authority.
but it's not exactly a fast-paced game. So it's doable.
A shiver runs across your mind.
I mean, doesn't look ideal, but you get what you can get.
The absolute
Running this on a laptop using the same GPU with a better CPU, I would expect to see performance closer to a 750, GTX 750 or 750 Ti, which I have done a video of. I'll just card at the top.
We got him now, eh?
And that gets considerably better performance. Now, while I'm running around, you can see that it still dips. It's always when panning the camera, the frame rate dips probably. But let's quickly change the settings to let's knock it down to 720p. Now, even at 720p, you'd expect to be getting a better frame rate because of the low resolution, but you can see straight away the GPU is running at only 50% now, where we're still only getting around the 30 FPS mark. So the GPU is able to run this game at 1080p and get 30 FPS. At 720p, you should be getting much higher than this. You should easily be able to get the high mid 40s, high 50s, and have a smooth experience at 30 FPS, I would hope, but the CPU is really holding this back. If you're running this with an i7, I don't know if there's any combinations of laptops out there running this GPU with an i7, you normally get the 970M. When I purchased this, the i7s only came with the 970M, the 960 only came with i5s, and I was being cheap, and I bought the cheapest i5. Because I wasn't buying this originally for a gaming laptop. So with these settings, let's pop back outside.
So much fun that those thieves almost got.
And you see the FPS tanks again, and the CPU is going straight back up. With the same FPS hovering around the mid-20s, hitting 30 when keep the camera still or go and talk to a NPC, for example. But if this is all you got, it's not great, but it does run. Now, one thing I have noticed, and if you can get the camera clipping outside of the map, you can see what's happening. Any kind of water effects, such as waterfalls, do cause the GPU to spike. See if we get going to 80% here, but since we've got a CPU bottleneck, it doesn't really make any difference on performance. A bit of a spike there, but it's because for some reason the water is drawn quite a way out of the map, and it seems to be causing rendering issues for whatever reason. I'm sure they'll optimise that later. But for a smoother experience, you're going to need a faster CPU. So if you have this exact combination, I probably wouldn't recommend buying this. If you have a CPU of a similar speed, I know I got a comment about a i7-920. It's actually a slower CPU than this. While it has more threads, it has 4 cores, 8 threads, it is a slower CPU. I don't know if the extra threads will make a difference, because this does utilise all the threads. So you should be able to get a better performance out of that, I think, because they are a similar speed in terms of benchmarking. So if this is an acceptable way of playing, I know for a lot of people it isn't, so if it's not on the highest, they're not interested, then it's worth playing and buying. I mean, I suspect performance will improve, and I will be posting various videos because I've been playing through this a couple of times. I've liked all the other games and played them quite happily. I mean, I've switched to medium settings now, and the performance is about the same. So if you've got enough DRAM, you can certainly bump these up without really worrying about it too much. to me we could probably knock this up to high. Something like that. About a second to reload the textures. And we're still getting 30 FPS and 720p. And it looks a bit better. Would be nice if we had some shadows. But as soon as you turn something like shadows on, where is it? Even on low details, you lose a good chunk of FPS. Looks nicer, but not worth the hit. I mean, we've lost about 5 FPS there, which is not worth it. So with all settings off, no fancy bloom or God rays or surface scattering or anything like that. Very basic texture filtering. And everything else on low. You should be able to bump up the texture quality and get a slightly better experience, but in all fairness, you need a decent CPU to run this game. So I hope that was informative and helps you decide if this is suitable for your current setup. I mean, it's a fun game. I think it's worth getting, but you would probably want to get a better CPU if you're using such a card. But yeah, it's certainly worth a go. If you can't run this game, you should be able to run Divinity 2, Original Sin 2 even, or Original Sin 1. They're both really good games as well. So yeah, so for now, see you next time. Goodbye.